Welcome to the Homeschool Together podcast. Where one working mom and a stay-at-home dad help you navigate the nuts and bolts of the growing and dynamic world of homeschooling.
With a focus on early learners, like me.
All the ins and outs of building and maintaining your homeschool life.
Homeschool.
Find out tips and tricks to make things like this easier.
I'm reading.
And ultimately, enjoy educating your kids. And what's that last thing?
Have fun together. Did I do good, Daddy?
Yeah, you did, sweetie. Good job. Hello and welcome back to Homeschool Together. Thank you for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about small things, but I want to talk about big things. Big things being you hitting that like and subscribe button on YouTube and leaving us a review on iTunes. That would be wonderful if you could. And
definitely go ahead and email us if there's something that's going on that you just want to share, or post it on the Facebook group. You know, you all give us great ideas for episodes. This episode was actually an idea from a listener. So, reach out to us. Like, let's, we're here. We'll read your emails. We love getting listener emails, or post on the Facebook groups. Tell us what's going good, what's not going well, what you're struggling with. We're trying to build community here. So definitely join our Facebook group and post or email us if you've got questions or concerns, or you're just, need a sounding board. Yeah. We really love receiving your correspondence. It makes us feel connected. So yeah, definitely don't be shy.
So today we're talking about the benefits of small groups. We know there's a lot of people out there who have large co-ops. Maybe they have a parent partnership like we have. And that's a wonderful resource. And if you have that, that's great. But there are some people who, some of the people we've interviewed maybe live in rural areas and they have only small groups of people, or like our friend Angela contacted us, and she's down in New Zealand, Hobbit Town, down there. She had to go out and create her own group. And we know that's going to become more and more of a struggle as we see homeschooling rates continue to increase across almost the entire country. I think the rates are all going up. And so inevitably there's going to be people who are looking for secular options in their areas. And there may not be as many options because you may be more rural, or you may be in an area that's more predominantly religious homeschooling, and you're looking to have your own carve out. And the challenge of finding those groups may settle with you.
Yeah, it was really great. Angela reached out to us. Hi, Angela.
Hello. And she's on the other side of the world. She's upside down listening to this.
It was so great. She emailed us just to kind of share her experience, what was going on. And she had said that homeschooling was feeling a little isolating, but that there weren't a lot of groups in her area, as you were talking about. And she'd started her own small group. And it was just by offering an activity. They did a really cool river study, and the other moms and kids that came to this just liked it so much that they decided to make it a regular thing. And the thing that stuck with me that really, inspired me to put some notes down and talk with you about it was, she said that, I'm thinking it wasn't quite what you may have been thinking about when you're talking about a hobby away, from the kiddos, but it's a start for her, right? Like we've talked about the importance of our kids having socialization. We've been talking about the importance of us having our own hobbies away. And, I was thinking about this and I was like, we talk so much about this parent partnership, and we're in classes, and, people have co-ops, and, if you watch YouTube, you might see other people, they have all these, they're doing tons of sports, or they've got scouts, or they've got charter school, or whatever. There's all these big things. And I think those are great, and we love ours. But I just wanted to recognize that small groups are also awesome. They're awesome for our kids, and they're awesome for us as parents. And so I just thought it'd be fun to kind of just chat about like why small groups, if you're a member of a small group, or if you're thinking about being somebody like Angela and taking that risk to maybe start something, offer an activity and put it out there and see if other, families want to come join, why small groups can be just as valuable, if not more valuable even, than large, more organized type of groups.
Well, going into that, kind of the first point being deeper connections and friendships, when you're in a larger group, it can be very intimidating, especially for us introverts out there, to go out there and, engage with, the parents. And
Are you counting yourself amongst the introverts? Are we trying to do this?
listen, so I have a gender problem when approaching the other half of the school, which is like 90% of the school.
Yeah, you're tall and you're male, and it's a hard thing.
The two little girls that are dressed in pink and have cute things on helps to soften that a lot.
Right, not so scary.
The dad jokes kind of like cause some problems, but as I've already displayed in this podcast already. There's a struggle sometimes, and you do feel like you're kind of I don't want to say a number or whatever, but sometimes you're just the guy who sits over in the corner and he's on his iPad and he's typing away and he's got his headphones on listening to podcasts or audiobooks or something.
Yes, sounds like you're trying to stay apart.
Yeah, and sometimes when you are in these smaller groups, it does force you to take the earbuds out, put the podcast down, or put the tablet down, or put your phone in your pocket and begin to hang out with a smaller group of people. And I think you get this a lot with the Girl Scouts because there is just, there's 5 or 6 of you or, running the group and stuff.
Right.
And
there's not a lot of parents. There are more girls.
I see this in my writers group. It becomes more of a personal thing because we, only got 20 people and you end up, knowing everybody and you end up chatting with people. And I think it really does drive a lot more engagement and pulls you in, as opposed to me being on campus where there's maybe 100 or 200 parents walking around. I can kind of sulk away and say, well, I'm not going to talk to anybody today. I'm going to walk around campus for an hour.
Well, right. Our school is more like almost like college. It's a la carte. So you take classes whenever you want, which means people are coming and going. We have some friends that go to a parent partnership where they only have 2 classrooms and there's a central area for the parents. So there's just not that many kids there. So they all are there.
They get more of a smaller experience.
They get a smaller experience. So I think you're right, definitely, that, it's in a larger group, you can be more anonymous. And maybe you develop, I would say, a lot of people on campus, right? People wave to you, but those are all kind of acquaintances. Yeah. Right? Whereas you also coach and, you only have 8 little girls on your team and one of them is our daughter. So you only have 7 other, parents to meet. And you do chat with all of them and you are developing more friendships because that's a situation that is smaller. So I think there's something to be said about, we're kind of explaining to our daughter right now because she's just about 9 and, the difference between quality and quantity with friendships. Yep. Because she just wants to know a lot of people and have a ton of friends. And it's like, well, you only have a few friends that are really close and that's a really great thing. So I think you're right. With smaller groups, you can develop that deeper connection. You have to put yourself out there and you can really develop some really quality ties to other people. Yeah,
especially when you're developing that deeper empathy and you're modeling that behavior with your children. When you're in those social situations, your children are very often, maybe they're apprehensive about being in there. And the first thing they do is their eyes kind of look up to you and see how you're reacting. And if daddy's being a wallflower, they'll become a wallflower.
Maybe so.
Possibly not my kids. I just point to the play area and they go there and play with all
They're
the kids.
Very extroverted.
They're very extroverted.
But if kids weren't, and I think large groups too can be very overwhelming for some kids, right? Sometimes having a small group is frankly best. And we have some friends from the parent partnership that we actually meet up with separately, like at a park or something. And it's just like our kids and their 2 kids and they're a really small group. And we get so much more with that experience because their kids are a bit overwhelmed. And it is nice to just have that quieter experience.
Yeah. And I think when we see with our kids, when they are with varying age groups, you may have this scenario where, the playmate, like I've seen this with us. We have a 5-year-old and an almost 9-year-old, right? And they're playing with a 7-year-old. And depending on the maturity of our kids versus their kids and their kids versus our kids, that 7-year-old might play more with the 9-year-old and then the 5-year-old feels left out, or the 7-year-old feels more like playing with the 5-year-old. But if there's a lot of kids to play with, what happens is the play date between the 3 or 4 kids becomes, oh, I'm going to go play with these 5 or 6 kids that I already know. And then it becomes dispersed. And what was the point of the play date? Yeah. But when you do come with those smaller groups, you end up having all 3 kids playing together, right? We see that when we have play dates here at the house and things like that. The play does not separate based on age and maturity. They just have fun and play together. But when there is that option to play with somebody who may be more in your age group, they might leave those kids behind. And so they might not develop those relationships, which I think is what would happen in a smaller group, is that if you only have 5 or 6 or 7 kids, there's not the cliques can't form there, and everybody kind of works together and has that empathy and that relationship, and they end up making friends, and maybe you have more of a mentor relationship with some of the older kids and the younger kids. And again, not to keep bringing it back to it, but we see that with the Girl Scouts as well,
we do.
where you have this kind of this reverence for the older girls, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, that's so-and-so and that's so-and-so, and they really, really revere them. Our kids in the parent partnership walk by kids who are in high school all the time, and they couldn't care less who those kids are.
Right. They don't know who they are. I think the other thing with small groups is that, you were talking about our kids looking at us for how to behave and act and things. In these bigger settings, I am not fully aware of everything that's going on, right? And so there's always this balance between, being like too involved and letting our kids kind of figure things out, right? We want to strike a balance because we don't want to run everything for them. We want them to figure some things out themselves. But with the smaller groups, and, when I'm in charge of just my 6 little brownies and I've got a couple other moms there, we know what's going on. And when something might get out of hand, we're right there to make sure that we can, give a correction or give a suggestion if there's a disagreement between girls. Or I feel like we're much more connected to the girls, and the girls are much more connected together. So it really helps them to understand and build those social skills with our, gentle guidance where needed. Whereas with larger groups, I mean, gosh, we don't know what's going on. We got multiple kids. We're not sure who's going where, what's happening, and things end up happening that we don't know are going on, and we can't be there to lend assistance if needed. And so I think that's really helpful. And also the kids get this sense of belonging. Right? They really feel strongly about their group, and you get this in sports too, where they feel strongly about their team because it's a small. At least the teams we've played on are very small groups, and the girls really feel very attached to those other girls.
Yeah, and that kind of goes to that stronger parental involvement that you're kind of mentioning there, and I really like that key because I think sometimes when we are in large group scenarios, there is that loss. It's more of that Lord of the Flies. Kids are all kind of left out on the island to do their thing.
And it's not intentional. It's just that there's too much going on. There's too many kids, and it gets confusing.
I heard somebody talk the other day about, public education is mass education, right? And home education is kind of almost the opposite of that. It's a kind of a laser focused education. And when we're in these smaller groups, we do have this wonderful overseeing element of, handful of parents, handful of kids, right? The number of educators to children is a great ratio, and it's what they would dream of having at, the bigger schools. And we don't want to bring in those. I mean, it's okay to have those issues of like, we have a big group of kids, they're doing something, whatever. We have to learn how to handle that. But that's not the environment we want to have all the time for our home education. And so if you are bringing our children to kind of groups, it's wonderful to have that kind of parental involvement, especially if you trust the people that are in your group. You can, trust that they will correct your child if there's something wrong. I do that on like the basketball courts. If there's behavior problems, I'm starting to see as I'm volunteering at my parent partnership, kind of because now I'm starting to help out in some classrooms, seeing how educators handle the classroom experience. And it's not like a big class, not like 30 kids or 25 kids, like kind of things that we hear about in the public school. We're talking about 14 kids, 12 kids, and how are they handling the corrections in those environments, and how far, and the tone at which they do that, and seeing how those kids respond is very, it's very educational to myself as an educator in my own home. But it is pretty cool to see, in these smaller environments where we do have the parental involvement, it can really help out in a lot of different cases.
Yeah, and I think it gives us an opportunity to we as parents develop those stronger bonds with each other, and then we also can collaborate. And kind of, it's that, it takes a village kind of thing, where, we can talk about things and how are you dealing with this? And especially with parents that have, students that are a bit older than ours, like, hey, did you have this issue when your child was X age? And, how did you handle that? Or have you ever encountered this? And or, so-and-so is having a problem, one child is resistant to, doing math or whatever it is. And we can all kind of talk about that, and we can brainstorm solutions, and it's a much more collaborative environment, and which is really fulfilling. I love to get into a group of homeschool moms and just talk shop. I mean, I'm just like, I'm happy because I love to talk about it, and let's collaborate, let's find solutions, and let's share in that experience, because it's not that my mom friends of kids who go to public school, it's not like they can't try to empathize with where I'm at, but I think until you've lived this homeschool life, I think it's just hard. It's just a little hard. You can empathize a little bit with the the toddler preschool years, right?
Exactly.
A lot of parents stayed home for their children's younger years, but like talking about the struggles of trying to get a 9-year-old to work on their handwriting, and dealing with motivation, and dealing with moodiness that started at 8 for us, and how do we deal with motivating her kind of all day long is something that I don't know that a parent who's got a child in public school who is working on homework and other things, but that all day togetherness, it's just a different beast.
It is
animal.
and I think you're attacking different problems. So I think that's where that difference comes from, is the public school or even private school parents are attacking that homeschool element, and they're trying to get the download. It's almost like a debrief style of education, because they want to know what you did for the day. What do we have to work on? What do we have to do?
Right, and what's your homework or project?
Like
what
you
can I
almost
help you with?
every day have to debrief with your kids to find out what's going on. What do they need help with? It's kind of the opposite with us, is that we are doing the actual activity, and so the challenges are different.
And we've got to plan forward too. Like what should we do with our kids next, and what do they want to do, and how do we incorporate what they're interested in with what we are capable of doing or they need to learn? And there's lots of competing interests.
Yeah, and what's cool about that is that kind of what you were alluding to is you do get that personalized experience and that support. And I love how you said that you like to talk shop and everything. I think there's that element where you're like, oh, I want to learn about what curriculums are working for you and everything. But then there's this other element, and I think a lot of homeschool parents will empathize with this, which is the problems you're having are normal, and it's okay. Like
sometimes you just need to hear somebody say it's okay.
Yeah,
and we try to tell you all this every week. It's okay.
Yeah, it's absolutely okay.
It's nice when you're sitting there with another parent. You can tell them like your whole download of like, sometimes it's just like word salad. Like, blah, this is what's going on, and they're like, it's okay. It's gonna be fine. It's like,
I had these problems, and this is a normal thing. And if you just keep pushing, it will fix itself. A lot of times, you just need that reassurance.
How many times did we say this to parents that we knew that had older kids? We're like, what age did they read? Our daughter's with the reading thing, right? How many times did we get that reassurance? And so I think it's great. And with small groups too, you can say, whereas a big group, it's like, okay, we're signing up to do X, right? Thing that's already been decided for us. The co-op or the parent partnership or charter school or whatever classes, that's what it is. And that's what we sign up for. When, you participate in a small group, you have so much more control over the direction and input into, what are the kids interested in? If we've got a group of 6 kids or something, or 10 kids, what do we want to do? We can do anything.
Well, and that goes into that next point, which is encouraging participation, not just from the parents' standpoint where they're, talking shop and involved in this selection process, but getting that feedback from the kids and being able to build out something that works best for your community, I think is such a strong point. And it kind of takes that idea of homeschooling and just kind of, multiplies it out just a little bit, because now you're in a small group and you're getting that same level of feedback. And because you're not so big and so critical mass that you have to make a one-size-fits-all solution, you're able to get that feedback from the students, bring them in, get their participation, and then jump to kind of the next idea, which is the flexibility in the learning approaches, because you could build out a group that is centered on a certain type of learning style.
Right, it's all experiential.
Exactly.
And small groups can be very nimble. Going on a field trip somewhere with, you've got 6 kids or 8 kids or something, it's a lot easier to do than 25 kids.
Oh, yeah,
there's a lot more that you can do. You're much more nimble, which is just great. What if you've got a group that's all hands-on? Or you've got a group that's that's very like arts focused, or that's very outdoor nature focused. And you could be part of even several small groups, right? That stimulate different areas for different kids. Maybe I've got one kid's very outdoorsy, so we have an outdoor, forest play group that we do, once a week. And then, I've got another kid that's very into art and loves all kinds of things like that. And we have an indoor co-op that we do once a week. And these are just different groups that kind of fill different needs, right?
Yeah. And I think something, if you're like, our friend Angela, if you're creating your own group, this is something around the flexibility, because it is so tailored to what you guys are trying to do. Mm-hmm. Something I just heard this week from one of the teachers I'm working with. She said, if somebody leaves your group or leaves your class, to not take it personally.
Yeah,
right?
That can be hard.
Because with the flexibility thing, it doesn't mean that your group isn't running well or you didn't do a good job or whatnot. If somebody comes, checks out your group and says, and you're really excited because maybe you only have 3 or 4 kids, right? Now you got a 5th kid.
Sure.
This is great. Mm-hmm. And then they don't come back the next week.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you weren't the right group or you did something wrong or whatnot. It just wasn't right for them, and not to take that personally and just keep plugging on. This happens to us in my writers group all the time.
Yeah, it happens in Scouts too.
In Scouts as well. We're constantly getting people in to test the water. They come, we talk to them, we engage with them, we give them free cookies, and you think that's enough to get you back here in 2 weeks again. And it's not always the case, because that person in their life is not ready to commit to this level of work, or they maybe realize this wasn't for them or something of that nature, and they have to go do what they do. And we have learned very very quickly to not take that personally. Yeah. So when you are building out these flexible groups and you are putting in all this participation and you're building out these wonderful experience in this kind of small group, don't take it personally if people come and go, or come and stay for a little while and then maybe realize it's not for them. Or maybe they just don't mesh with the group, or they don't, their kids aren't getting along, whatever, it's fine. It doesn't mean you guys are wrong, doesn't mean you're bad, just don't take it personally.
Yeah, I think it's a really brave thing to start something and not know exactly.
Because we put so much of ourselves into it when we're doing it.
Right.
There's so much time and human capital put into it. We feel very personal.
But even if you start something and just say, hey, I see this post go up, pretty regularly on our local homeschool group. It's like, hey, my family and I are going to be going to the beach on this day, and we're doing tide pooling. And any other homeschool families that would like to join us, we'd love to see you. So it doesn't have to be... I think this is the other power of small groups, is that it doesn't have to be grand. Mm-hmm. If
That's
you want
to,
you want to start something, if you want to try to see if there's any interest in your community for whatever it is that you're interested in, you don't have to do a big thing. It doesn't have to have a lot of work that goes into it. You could do something as simple as that. Hey, we're going to go to X place and we're going to do this thing, and we would love for anyone to join us. And then, you can build from there, right? Mm-hmm. That's the other thing. It's like, I think it's a brave thing to do, to put yourself out there and kind of start and say, hey, I remember that you have 2 stay-at-home dad friends, and it was because I put a post out on our local moms group 7 years ago, that I said, hey, are there any other homeschool dads out there? Because my husband's a stay-at-home father, and he would really love to create a little play group. And, and that's how you've made friends we still have today. Yep. And so, don't be afraid to ask, because there's somebody else out there who definitely might want to join. Mm-hmm. So definitely think about, it doesn't have to be grand. It can just be, small. It can be a spark. And maybe you start one thing and one area and that doesn't take off, but maybe something else that you post does.
Absolutely. And I think one of the big things about getting into these small groups, it begins to create that kind of experience where you're not the captain of the ship. You guys are working together to all row the boat type of thing. And the one thing that does for you as an educator, and I felt this very acutely, is it reduces the stress on you as a parent.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because in these groups, you see this with your Girl Scouts. Sometimes you ask a parent to run the meeting for the week, or come up with the idea, or, hey, you get to run the snack thing and you get to do that. And then you get to do this type of thing. And you're not having to do all the work to keep the whole group going. You can offload some of that stress, some of that fun and education. And just the fact that you're doing an activity with a bunch of other kids, your kids are just overjoyed to be playing with other kids and doing this activity and running around and playing, you're no longer having to be the person, the captain of the ship. We always joke about the cruise director.
Yeah.
You know, what's up next today? You know,
What's next, Daddy? Now what do we do?
Starting
now
at-
what do we do?
starting at 8:05, breakfast is on the table. At 8:10, 8:10 we're doing this, and it's like that all the way through the day. Having these little kind of social groups, these small groups where you can just say, okay, we're going to do this activity for 20 minutes, and then you guys can go play at the playground for an hour, and then we're going to come back together, and we're going to go hike through over by the river, and we're going to go skip rocks, and we're going to, maybe find some, fish or something of that nature. Oh, the salmon are spawning right now. We can go watch them in the pools and stuff like that. And then we're going to come back together, have a snack, and we're done. It's 2 hours, right? And you didn't have to run the whole show, and you got to chat with other adults. You got to watch your kids play. You got to laugh about things. It takes a lot of stress off of you and also stress off the children when they're just sitting there going, oh gosh, Daddy, yet another workbook. Yes, children, workbooks are the key to our knowledge. Why aren't you excited about them as I am?
Yeah, I think it's true. I changed over the Girl Scout model this year. I kind of pushed.
Yeah, this is actually good. That's a great point.
Yeah, I pushed this on the rest of the group because it's always been a homeschool Girl Scout troop. It's multi-age. It's like, I don't know, maybe 25 girls or so. And it's always had, a couple of leaders per level is what we try to do. But I was definitely feeling the stress. I do work full time, but this is a very important thing for me to have this time to do something that's just me and the girls. And so
it really, that's such a great point. It is the thing you do with the girls.
It's my main thing. And I make time to go and be present when I'm there, but I have a really hard time planning and things. And so just finding the time for it. So I did ask this year, hey, can we adopt more of a co-op model?
The collaboration model, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So that like every parent kind of takes a week or a different badge or activity or whatever. And I really wasn't sure how that was going to go over. And the moms have been overwhelmingly supportive about that. And even we had a new mom join, a new brownie start just a few weeks back. And she was like all in it. She goes, okay, what can I bring? We're going to go on a hike. I'm going to make some sheets up so we can find different kinds of leaves and identify trees. And she was all into it, which was just super cool. And the stress on me has been so greatly reduced by, I've got these 7 little girls now, and all of their moms are now engaged, and I don't have to work so hard, and no one else is working very hard either. We're all just sharing, and
division of labor happening here.
The division of labor is amazing. And the other thing that's great about it, because it's such a small group, we have the freedom to know that our kids, our kids specifically, really need to run around like twice at least during a meeting. Like they cannot make the whole hour and a half before snack time without a couple of getting the wiggles out sessions. And we know that about our kids, and we can just do that for them. We have total freedom and flexibility. So, when you have a small group, it's much easier to make accommodations. The more kids you've got, the more everyone's got to kind of like, come on, everybody stay together, and let's all do this together. You have a small group, you can say, okay, we'll take some time out for this. Or, oh, we have one child who's really sensory sensitive. I have one of those in our group. She's very sensitive to noise. And so I can make sure, because we have such a small group, that we're all, nobody's screaming and not upsetting her. And it's that kind of thing, right? We can just be more personal about it and be more flexible.
Yeah, I really like the idea of having those groups, and like that kind of the idea where you're dividing up the labor. Everybody's got a little bit of skin in the game. One of the things that I think that one of the benefits of that is because there's so many people who are involved, it ensures a lot more success and gives those children the opportunity to be successful and build confidence. So by bringing in more people in this small group, you're allowed to not ensure, I mean, we can't guarantee anything, but it does allow the circumstance of whatever you're doing, whatever activity it is, to have an enjoyable experience, to have the outcomes be successful, to not allow the children to fight uncontrolled, right? Or unmonitored. And in having this kind of nice shell of, I don't want to say protection, but
it's supportive.
In the supportive,
it's a supportive environment.
You give this ability to the youngsters to have the confidence to be able to achieve the thing they're doing, whatever that activity is. Like you guys were talking about, your latest thing is about going on a hike, and you're building out the structure of weekly activities where you guys are learning about the different pieces of hiking, putting together your kit, doing, you're going to do food prep and things of that nature. And then you guys are going to go on a hike. And this is obviously all protected around by like 3 or 4 or 5 moms. And you guys are going to go on this hike, and the girls are going to feel like they get to lead the hike.
Mm-hmm.
They get to make all the decisions. And in their world, they feel they're in control.
Right.
And it gives them so much confidence, but they have this support network that's just kind of built around them. And you can do this in these wonderfully little small groups when you do these activities, whether it's like a learning based thing, going to the river. I think Angela was talking about going to the river and doing a thing. You have these wonderful support groups, and the kids get to thrive within that, and it just gives them so much confidence and excitement. And the fact that they're doing it with other kids along with them, I think they can, even kids within the group who may not feel like they're doing enough, they can see the model of like the child next to them, and they can mimic that. And that can give them the confidence to maybe move forward and grow within themselves.
And because it's a small group too, I think that the kids who are less naturally outgoing, they have a chance to speak up too. They have a chance to have their voices heard, where, in a larger group, they might never speak out. We've got, when all 25 scouts are together, there are some of my girls that would not say a peep. But when I only have 6, they will speak up.
Exactly.
Right? Because they feel safe in that environment. They feel supported. Those are their friends. And so I think, especially if we have kids that are more introverted or just more shy, maybe, or younger and more unsure.
The younger be a big one, yeah.
This is a great opportunity for them to build confidence. This is a really safe, small environment where they can remember everybody's name, right? How often do our kids come back from school and they're like, yeah, my friend. We're like, what's her name? I don't know.
I got a kid, 9-year-old, who doesn't even know her teacher's name of the favorite class she's in.
Right.
Like, oh, this is your favorite class. What's her name? Well, I don't know.
But I tell you, in our small group of 6, now 7 little scouts, I mean, our daughter knows every one of them. She knows every parent's name because there's just not that many. It's easy for them to remember, and they feel like that's a safe environment. So I think the confidence building aspect can't be overshadowed. And if you have options in your area, and you can go with larger groups or smaller groups or things, if you have a youngster, and especially a shy youngster, think about joining something small. Think about starting small, because it's a really great stepping stone if you want to go into something larger later. Just it's a great way to ease in. The other thing I think is really nice too is when you have a small group, it's not as distracting. It's easier for kids to focus and collaborate together. Yeah. I see this a lot too with our small group of girls, with the scouts, is that when we're doing everything all together, there's a lot of competing voices and noises and ideas, and it's really hard. And
I'll never forget walking into that Girl Scout event in Ireland.
And there were hundreds of them.
The decibel level was like that of like a 737 landing overhead. It was insane. I have never heard a noise level that loud.
Yeah, it was loud. There was a lot of girls. It was like a regional fun day for the Irish Girl Guides.
Remember, it was when we did the first meeting.
Oh, when you went to the meeting. Oh yeah, there was only like 18 girls. No, maybe not even that.
It was wild.
16, 18 girls. Yeah, it was loud. But yeah, I think that this is a good opportunity, especially when we want to ask them to work together.
Yeah.
And it's easier to break them off. When we did this hiking activity, when we wanted to find all the things we would need to go hiking, it was a scavenger hunt. I was able to break the girls into 3 teams, and that was my whole group was 3 teams. It was great because they had this time to focus together. If you got 30 kids, I mean, it's a lot to manage, and it's too hard for them to focus and be able to really work together.
You have to use different strategies when you get to that
Much different strategies.
I was, I'm in a class with the basketball class, and we have 17 kids, and I was kind of wondering inside my head, I was like, I don't know how a single teacher could manage, like, I'm thinking from a basketball coach standpoint, like, how can I make a meaningful practice in 15 minutes with 17 kids? It's like alone. I'm like, that's almost impossible. And I made suggestions. Hey, let's run it like a basketball camp where we have rotations and sessions and have activities that kids can do without monitoring. So the 2 of us can be focused on smaller groups. And that was like the only thing that could come to mind is how do you manage that many kids? And with a smaller amount of kids, you're right. You do get that focused attention, and you can really, as you said, you break it up, 6 girls into 3 groups, that's 2 kids a group. I mean, you can really focus with those kids.
You really can. And you can be very efficient with your time and your energy as well. Because I can look at the 7 little girls in front of me with the other couple moms there.
Yeah.
We can see exactly where they're at. We can see when they're ready to move to the next thing. We don't need to drag things out. We can pivot quickly. It's all that flexibility. I think large groups can be great, especially organized. I mean, we love the classes we go to. It's not that, but I think there is a wonderful power in small groups. So thank you so much, Angela, for writing to us and inspiring this episode. Hello, and we're so happy that you found a small group that's really going to be fulfilling for you. I hope that it continues and that it's really meaningful for you and your kids. And if you out there are thinking, I feel isolated or I'm in a rural area, think about starting something. Think about starting something small. Just because it's small, even if it's you and one other family, it doesn't have to be big for it to be really impactful to you and your kids. And some of the best homeschooling friends that we have are from small groups and mom friendships that I have too. So definitely don't discount the power of small. Thanks so much for joining us today and making us a part of your homeschool journey. Please engage with us on social media. Join our Homeschool Together podcast group on Facebook and find us at Homeschool Together Podcast on Instagram. We'd love to hear your feedback, questions, and recommendations. Until next time.
Happy homeschooling!